She was only 9 years old, her tiny hands trembling as she pulled half-eaten scraps from a dumpster. People walked past without looking, without caring. But one man stopped. A man whose name carried weight across cities. A billionaire. And the choice he made in that moment would change her life forever. The night air was sharp, carrying the bitter smell of waste that clung to the alley. Under a flickering streetlight, a young girl knelt beside a dumpster, her fingers trembling. As she dug through torn bags, her small frame shook not only from the cold, but from the hollow ache in her stomach. She pulled out a bruised apple, wiped it against her worn shirt, and clutched it as though it were treasure. People passed by, eyes fixed straight ahead, unwilling to see. Among them walked a man whose shoes had never touched a street this broken. His coat alone cost more than the cars parked nearby. He had the reputation of a titan, the kind of man who could buy companies before breakfast and topple them by lunch. But when his gaze fell on the girl, something inside him shifted. He did not see a nameless child. He saw a mirror of his own hunger long buried, but never forgotten. Few knew his story. Before skyscrapers bore his name, he had known hunger that burned like fire. His childhood was one of cracked floors, leaking roofs, and empty cupboards. He remembered nights when his mother pretended to have already eaten so he could take the only slice of bread. Those memories had carved him, shaping his hunger into ambition. But in chasing power, he had buried that past deep beneath glass towers and silk ties. Now, in the reflection of that child's eyes, it all returned. The girl looked up, startled by his presence. She expected scolding, perhaps someone calling her a thief. She had learned that silence was her only defense. Yet this time, silence was not punishment. It was recognition. The man stood there, wordless, his breath forming clouds in the cold. The crowd round them hurried, pretending not to notice. But he stayed still, a storm of memories holding him in place. Dignity isn't given by wealth, he thought. It's carried even in hunger. The billionaire reached into his pocket. But it wasn't money he offered, it was his hand. A gesture simple, yet filled with unspoken promise. She hesitated, her thin fingers frozen between fear and hope. Then, slowly, she placed her hand in his. That moment became the pivot of her story. The next days unfolded like scenes no one expected. He brought her not into a shelter for one night, but into a home that would last. He ensured she had food, schooling, and a bed that did not shiver in the wind. Reporters tried to spin the story as charity, but he corrected them with a single line. This was not charity. This was a reminder because once I was her. The city took notice. Boardrooms whispered. Employees who once saw him only as untouchable began to see the man who had risen not by birthright, but by resilience. The girl, once invisible in the shadows of alleys, became a symbol of unseen lives waiting for a chance. There was a day when she stood on a stage. Years later, her voice, steadied before hundreds, she spoke of hunger, of dignity, of how a hand extended in silence could rewrite someone's fate. And in the front row, the man watched with quiet pride. Two quotes lingered in their story, echoing beyond the walls that first held them. True wealth is not in what we keep, But in the lives we lived, hunger may bend the body, but it does not break the spirit. And so the girl who once searched for scraps became a woman who built hope for others. Her story was not just hers. It was for every bystander who ever looked away, and for every soul who ever believed they were unseen. The billionaire's choice had become her beginning. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to decide that looking away is no longer an option. There are silent battles all around us: hunger, dignity, survival. And sometimes, the smallest gesture becomes the spark that changes everything. Where are you watching from? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories of quiet strength inspire you, subscribe for more. Because every silent hero deserves to be seen.